Hello and welcome, everyone. My name's Bob Banerjee, and I'll be the moderator for today's session. First of all, let's cover some housekeeping items. First of all, the entire webinar will be recorded. You should get a copy of the recording within 48, 72 hours, something like that, a couple of days. So you'll be able to review it, pause and review it and send it on to your friends. So there's that. Second thing is you'll find there's a chat window and a Q&A window. I know it sounds like a duh statement, but any questions, put them in the Q&A window, because that way we'll get a list of the questions and then all the panelists will get them and we'll be able to go through them one by one. The chat window, really not very useful for what we're doing today. It's really the Q&A window. Before I introduce my guests, all right, let's start. Selling AI and IoT, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And despite what people think, that's not referring to my panelists. It's referring to the fact that I've asked my three guests to be blunt, be honest, be pragmatic, concise with their answers in getting the information to you. The consequence of that, however, is that in the next 60 minutes, you're going to walk away feeling like you've got a huge amount of information thrown at you. And that's because I've asked them to distill their messages down to almost bullet points. So by the end of this hour, you'll find that you'll have learned a lot, you'll take a lot of notes, and you'll have a lot to take away. With that, Michael, Jessica, and Todd, would you kindly introduce yourselves? Michael, would you go first?
Sure, happy to do that, Bob. Thank you for moderating today and describing all of us very early in the conversation. My name is Michael Knight. I'm the Chief Digital Officer here at Epic and BroadSky. And my background is about 25 years in technology. Started off working at one of the biggest logistics providers, Big Brown, UPS, and worked through with telcos, consulting firms, cybersecurity, and things like that. So my career was spent in and around the edge and these types of devices. So I've been in a CTO role for the past 15 years and looking forward to sharing some adventures that I've had along with some of the other panelists.
Thank you very much. Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica Morin. I'm the Director of Strategic Alliances. I work really closely with BroadSky and IntelliSite and kind of fill that gap when it comes to IoT opportunities and help make sure that from start to finish, we're able to come up with some business outcomes and some successes.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Todd.
Hey, I'm Todd Holsenbeck. I'm the channel manager for the Southeast for BroadSky Networks. You can see my picture, and you also know that I'm the ugly of the three of us. That's okay. The reason I am here is because of some geography, where headquarters lies, I've been really engaged from an IoT standpoint, even a little bit more than some of our standard channel managers. We're all really engaged, but I've talked with a lot of partners out there, and I've seen the good and the bad and the ugly. So I'm here to provide some guidance from that standpoint.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, all three of you. My name is Bob Banerjee. I'm the VP of Product. My job here is to get you the information you need and the product and features that you need that we'll run through today. All right, let's get straight on to it. So what's the agenda? The agenda is there's about 10 slides. Each slide has one question on it, and I will pose that question to my three contestants, and they'll have a chance at 30 seconds, 1 minute, or 2 minutes to make their points, their concise messages in that time, and then we'll move straight on to the next slide. So there's almost nothing in the slide. All the value today is in listening to the core messages that the people are trying to convey to you. Let's go with that. Let me press on the right button. Okay, slide number one, and Michael, I'll be asking you to take this. There's a lot of confusion out there about what AI can and cannot do, and people missell it all the time. How do you best explain it?
Well, first off, Bob, it's just like Skynet. It's no different, except that it's pretty different than anything to do with Skynet. So artificial intelligence is when a machine, specifically a computer, is given human capability in the sense of it has the ability to have visual perception, speech recognition, text recognition, apply rules to data, and things like that. So effectively, it's providing a type of function you would normally expect a person to be able to leverage, such as seeing and understanding what a vehicle or a person is, or what the context of a situation is. Then it's also in the sense of data, right? Being able to align information or an algorithm around data to understand exactly why somebody is choosing something or what will be chosen based on the profile of that data. Those are very common alignments. What is not, and what we do, of course, see in the news around some things that Facebook and others may be doing with data, that still is nowhere near Skynet for a level of prediction or Minority Report that is seen there. We can do some amazing things with computer vision, and we can talk about that a little bit further on, but that's definitely some misperceptions that people have, is that the machine is coming and the machine is not here yet.
Thank you very much, Michael. Yes, just because someone says AI in a sentence doesn't mean they have the genius solution at all. Jessica, why don't you run with it?
Sure. So I was just talking about how I kind of keep it simple with my kids when they ask me about all this technology. And I always say that AI can't be creative or use your common sense, but when you have IoT with it, it makes it so that the data that you get has larger capabilities.
Fantastic. Todd, why don't you wrap it up for us? You have a good blend of AI, IoT, and both the Broad Sky and IntelliSight sides of the house.
Thank you, Bob. In a large sense, you know, Michael being the Chief Digital Officer hit some of those high points. I think there's a couple of things that we try and make sure our partners are conveying to their customers as we talk is machine learning is powerful. It can't learn things that don't exist. So we need to talk about expectations of what data is available, what we can grasp, and what problems we're going to solve. And the second thing I would say on the maybe kind of cannot do side is, you know, we're at limitations at the data we can measure. Now, we've got a wide swath of things we can do there with sensors and other things that are there, but we need to make sure that we're solving for something, or at least talking about a problem or a use case in the beginning that has a solution to it. Instead of trying to find some pie in the sky, we're just going to gather all the data and hope for the best down the road. Those are the kind of things I talk on in that standpoint.
Yeah, I would add to that what all three of you said, and that is sometimes people come up to me saying that they want to use AI, video and AI to solve a problem. And sometimes they forget that you have IoT sensors as well. And the blend of those two magical technologies is often much more powerful than relying on one. So I ask people to stay open-minded. So when you think about AI, think about IoT. If you're thinking about IoT, think about AI and video as well at the same time. All right, let's move straight on. The second one, we've talked about AI. Let's switch the focus now purely to IoT. Michael, what is IoT in the simplest sense, and where's the boundary around it?
Yeah, so IoT is the Internet of Things. There are certain companies that have talked about the Internet of Everything and all things that are connected to the Internet. A lot of people have become very frustrated with IoT and say it means it's only talk, because they didn't actually get a result out of that. And oftentimes, the IoT component of that, when people start thinking of sensors, and anything can be a sensor. Many things can be a sensor, but the most important thing is that sensor has to sense and then provide information about what it sensed. There are many types of components out there that can't provide that information in either a normalized or a reliable sense. So if someone says, well, a camera can be a sensor, that's true if it has artificial intelligence, right? Because I need to be able to detect, track, and apply things to that. We can have very generic or low-level sensors like a door contact, and that door contact has to have the ability to send information back in a way that I can act on it. So what I would say is many things can be sensors, but only can be a part of IoT if it can provide reliable information and pass that physical over to the digital so it can be enacted on.
Thank you. Todd, what would you add to that?
Well, I think, you know, adding to that is far better than trying to expand from a data set standpoint. We see customers that have sensor inputs that they're looking to implement or looking for information from, that, you know, I've done several opportunities where it wasn't, there wasn't a solution that goes with it. So that's why I'm talking about boundaries. There was nothing to solve for, even though they were gathered. We, I think Michael's right in differentiating. You've got to get the information there, and get the information there to act on. It's got to be actionable. Actionable was the key word that I wanted to focus on.
Good point. Just recording video is not enough. There's got to be some outcome, some action out of it. Jessica, would you wrap it up for me, please?
Sure. So I kind of think of it as like your brain is the AI, and the sensors in your muscles are all kind of a part of it, but it's great to have it interchangeable, and it all goes together.
Fantastic.
That's good.
I would add, I would add maybe, what did I write down here? A couple of notes. Yeah, there are some people that start off, they have a problem, they solve it with AI, and then they discovered they had a good outcome and everyone was really happy. And then they need to, somebody comes along and says, I want to solve this slightly different problem as well. Can we reuse this for that? Oh no, we'll have to have a separate solution for that. And then there's a third problem. And if you're a city, it just becomes absolutely crazy. And that's when reselling our kind of solution, where you have a platform that does AI and IoT, is really crucial, because you don't have to keep deploying point solutions to a customer. You can give the customer a platform, and then they can continue to expand as they go out. All right, let's go on to the next one. And Michael, I'll have you run with this first. We've covered AI, we've covered IoT. Is AIoT a realistic acronym? What does it mean? What is it misleading? What?
Yeah, and I'll cover that, and I'll throw a little bit of a composite between the first two sections around even machine learning, because that's often, there's a little bit of a misconception there too. But artificial intelligence combined with the Internet of Things. So if I have sensor data flowing in, again, we've talked about very simple types of sensors going to very complex or very ornate sensors. If I have the ability to take those streams and not only look at them individually for certain thresholds and behavior characteristics and things like that, but I can also make decisions off of all of them. So as an example, Jessica gave the great illustration about, you know, the 5 senses that you have in your brain is providing a level of processing. If you see water, you don't know if it's hot or cold unless there's some very visible steam that's on that. And sometimes it takes some additional senses to really get context of what a situation is. So artificial intelligence, that's aligning, looking at data, there's data streams coming in from the IoT side, the rule sets that are applied. Also artificial intelligence from computer vision, again, using a camera, which can be both optical and thermal, which we'll touch on perhaps a little bit later as part of the conversation. Those things combined, AI with IoT, give you context, and you get heightened context if you apply machine learning. What is machine learning? It's taking net new data that's coming in, because I've already trained the model with AI. I've already built that. It's building that increased training loop that says whether I'm reinforcing or changing a pattern that was wrong, or I'm giving more data or more information to provide a better heightened sense for that AI stack.
Thank you very much, Michael. Jessica, wrap it up for me, please.
Sure. So I kind of think that the AI and IoT can stand alone, but when they're together, it's almost like they're stronger and better, efficient and innovative. And I think that that's really where we're trying to help with the business outcomes and what we're trying to solve. When we get opportunities that come to us, that we want to make sure that they're in our right wheelhouse. I think that a lot of the use cases that we come up with illegal dumping, whether it's people counting or just making parks in cities safer and smarter, it all kind of goes under the AI and IoT umbrella.
Thank you, Jessica. I'll add a couple of things. When people talk about AI IoT to me, some people automatically assume that the idea is, I'm taking this IoT data the temperature data, the pressure data, whatever IoT sensor data that's coming in. And I'm going to apply AI to that stream of data to try and predict outcomes or look for patterns. That is true. That is true. There's many different ways, including simple visualizations where you can see a trend of something going in the wrong direction. But I think where AI is fantastically positioned is in video analytics. That is a strong suit for AI. All right, let's move on to. All right, that's been a little bit academic. Now let's take it to the real level. And Jessica, why don't you run with this? Do you have some examples of good IoT projects over the past few years?
Yes, so I have two really good ones that I think. One is having to do with retail, and just like a lot of people probably on this call love to shop. I know I do. And with the recent with everything with COVID-19, I wasn't able to go into a store. So one of the things that the projects that we did would help was how long were people waiting in the car to pick up their order, along with when we were able to actually go back into the stores. There was a limit on how many people could actually be in the store, and if it was above the capacity. So our projects really in our solution helped to make sure that that data was captured and alerts were put into a dashboard and people were aware of what was happening, along with just really making sure that when you're in the parking lot that you were safe while in there. So those are the kind of things that the projects that we helped with retail. The second one has to do with smart parks. I kind of bring it back to my own experience, being outside all the time with the kids and trying to figure out things to do and keep busy. I really wanted to make sure that you want to know that where you are is safe. And so with the smart parks, we worked with a couple different cities where making sure that to eliminate theft of vehicles and also to help with the resources, because cops can't be everywhere, right? And so our solution with the AI and IoT, we were able to deter people from having crimes within their parks. And I think that's really important, not only to me, but to other people that are utilizing the parks.
Jessica, just to clarify, so were you referring to projects that use AI and IoT rather than pure IoT projects?
Correct. So AI and IoT, because I think that they kind of go together, right? We can capture all this information. We can see someone that's stealing a car, but what are we going to do with it? And the fact that we're able to help real time and to be able to either, have somebody do our eyes on where they're actually saying, hey, we see you making that decision. We're going to call the police. I think that's huge, and it's a great project that we were able to help with.
Got it. Thank you. Before I pass it over to you, Michael, questions are coming in. If it's okay with the audience, we will tackle the questions towards the end. There'll be plenty of time, but please keep those questions coming in. Michael, examples of IoT projects. I know you're involved with all of them, from the smallest to the largest.
Yeah, so I would say let's use a couple of very simple examples that then grew, right? Because that's what we all want to do. We want to grow our business. We want to provide something the customer gets an immediate outcome from, right? And then we can expand from there. So Jessica talked about going from IoT to AI and kind of bridging that world. What I would say is, and we kind of look at the next topic, and I'll cover some of these points here too, is that an Internet of Things solution has to be something that is going to help us make money, save money, or help people be able to be more safe or more secure. And Jessica covered those. So for businesses, they're looking for that specific outcome, and how fast can I get that outcome? So if we can prevent serious loss, they're interested. If we can help them make money based on better information and make them be able to make adjustments and have better profit, that's a great thing. So something as simple as cold storage management. How is that leveraged? That's leveraged across something as critically important as hospitals and healthcare, vaccines, IV fluid, the whole way over to somebody that is keeping turkeys deep frozen, and they don't want to lose their big profit margin around Thanksgiving, because let's face it, in the US especially, we love turkey at Thanksgiving, and that's coming, and we're not afraid of it. But the good news is that we're able for each one of those to start off with the most simple type of sensor, connecting the physical to digital of what's happening in there, and being able to not only trend, but alert on that. Here's that cool next step though. As that's going and I have a fluctuation in temperature, was it because the door was left open? How do I know that? Door contact, simple, easy things that we're putting in there to solve that problem. All right, well then who's in there? There's a great question, right? Now we can leverage optical sensors, cameras, as that trigger of that door contact is coming open, not only getting a frame of that person, but if appropriate, in the right environment, this isn't Big Brother, this is enterprise, right? Facial recognition on that person that is opening that door to make sure that they are permitted to be in that area. And that's very heavily used, of course, in the healthcare space, and even in the cold storage and food management and other things. Again, the food supply chain, obviously a lot of discussions around that right now. Those are some big ones that can all start with IoT, bringing that information in appropriately, building trends, building alerts, alarms, getting that action to the right person's eyes and then to their hands to do something about that. Those are the critical elements, and then AI, especially computer vision, then comes in behind that.
Got it. Thank you very much. Move on to the next one, complexity. Some of those projects that Jessica, I'll ask you to run with this first. The projects that you've come across, have they been simple, medium, or complex in nature?
All the above. I think that there's some that are very simple, whereas we're using, we're able to just, people counting, and they want to be able to put that back and have some analytics on that. Or it can be as complex as, a smart connected space, which is like a stadium, right? There's so many things that are happening. There's Wi-Fi, there's, we have to, kind of look at the bigger scope of things, or are there different sensors and cameras and where everything is coming back to. And we really have to do, a deeper dive and more scoping when it comes to the more complex projects.
Jessica, here's a trick question for you. As someone that's trying to sell, if I'm trying to sell these AIoT projects, right? Mm-hmm. Should I try to get a larger number of simpler projects, or should I try to get a smaller, larger of complex projects?
So honestly, I think it has to do with the business outcomes. It doesn't matter how large, as long as we're trying to solve for something, and what's that business outcome, right? Like if you're people counting, that's very simple. You can just put a sensor and that's it. But we want to be able to use that analytics. And what are you trying to solve for? Are you looking to maybe not have so many people in your space, or like what's that business outcome, and how can we help with return on investment? Like, is it too many people? Are you in fear of being fined, or do you not have enough people? Is it because the hours may vary? So we really want to dig deep, even if it's simple or complex, and figure out what we're trying to solve for.
Got it. Thank you. Michael, would you wrap it up for me, please?
Sure, and I'll get quasi-philosophical here. It gets very complex when you cannot get to the why. So what Jessica is describing, the outcome, that customer has a why they're doing something. Things get very complex if you jump in early and you're just trying to solve the what's. I need a count here, I need this over there. And you end up going all over the place trying to look through getting all of this information, unless you know that why, that true business outcome, the reason that they're driving for that. And usually with your key stakeholders, there's a couple of those whys. They may be similar, but everyone has their specific lens on that. So the projects get unbelievably complex when you don't know that. There can be a project that has unbelievable amount of components, data streams, and data sets, but when you understand the why, that why comes from what's have key data points. That data has to come from somewhere. And when we connect to those edges, we ingest the information, enrich it, and drive the insights and outcomes, we win, right? And they will be, some of those can be challenging, but just because they're challenging doesn't mean they're complex. Complexity is generally an end result of not understanding all the variables that were there. And so I would just caution you, definitely jump in with your customers, but know what you're jumping into if it's warm water or piranhas.
You nailed it for me, actually, Michael. Unsurprisingly, it is consultative selling, and some people are not comfortable with that. Some people are much more comfortable selling fixed products with fixed features and capabilities. AIoT is much more of a consultative sell, which means that if you're used to doing 80% of the talking, you're now going to have to switch to 80% of the listening. So in a 10-minute phone call, you're going to speak for 2 minutes and you're going to listen for 8 minutes. You're going to write down lots of answers to open-ended questions and then take that back to people like on this team who can sift through and sniff out potential opportunities. But it is very different. It is very different. All right, let's move on then. Michael, I think you'd be best to kick this one off. I hear a lot about edge compute, intelligent edge, but what is it and what does it mean for AIoT?
So the real question, whenever you're talking about data that's being generated by the sensor, is how timely is that data, right? Is it, well, I want to know how many people went through the park today. Well, you can wait 5 or 10 minutes for all that data to be coalesced, as an example. I want to know if a car or a vehicle and a pedestrian could potentially collide in a near miss. That's extremely timely data. We need to know that at that, at that sub-second level. And the challenge with in today's current means of connectivity, if you're trying to do all of these certain types of computations or inferences in the cloud, there is the delay of transmission of information, and then there's the slight delay of computation or inference, and then response back down to that edge. So an intelligent edge is a comprised stack that enables connectivity. Well, what are the connectivity layers? Well, of course, whether that's 4G, 5G, CBRS, Wi-Fi, WiMAX, millimeter wave, ultra wideband, whatever is the requirement for that edge, and it could be several of those that create that right composite. That next step is how fast can I get that information from the physical to the digital? So for AI specifically, when I'm looking at an intersection and I want to be able to based on a vector that two objects are going, be able to initiate a local IoT response that flashes lights, that sound signals, that can warn people that there is a potential collision that's going to occur, that has to happen in an incredibly short amount of time. So that intelligent edge is one that was deployed and is managed centrally. There can be some autonomy, but generally you want to have a central management layer with a control plane. But all of the edge inferencing around the IoT sensors coming in, the computer vision data and video and those types of things is coming in near real time and is being processed there so you can generate that outcome. And then most importantly, I don't have to move all of this raw data back to a central stack, which burns time, energy, and certainly can make a carrier happy, which we'd like to make our carriers happy. But more importantly, we want to make happy customers and do the right things. So that intelligent edge is that combination of those capabilities.
Michael, you sound like you know your stuff. It's actually amazing.
Well, I learned from Dr. Bob. Do you know him?
There's one more thing you mentioned there, Michael. It's just fantastic what you said. People think that IoT equals IoT sensors equals data coming in. No, it's both ways, right? Mm-hmm. You can have actuators, you can make lights change. So IoT is not just about sensors, it's also about driving action. Jessica, why don't you run with this? Your interpretation of intelligent edge for your customers.
Well, I think it's hard to beat Michael's explanation for sure. But so the way that I understand it, super simple. Again, I feel like I have this nickname of being simple answers, but is that it's the power to make decisions in real time. And again, it goes back to some of the things that, the why of it is, if there's an intersection and people are getting hurt in that intersection, I don't want somebody to call me and let me know, hey, just to let you know, somebody almost got hit by a car. I want that data to be really quick and accurate. And that's what I feel like intelligent edge helps us do.
You summarized that beautifully. And 5G is something we're going to pick up on another question, because some people in the audience must be wondering, well, isn't 5G going to fix all of that? Aren't we going to be able to do everything in the cloud? Why do we need anything at the edge anymore? So let's see how we go. Todd,
Yes,
I'm going to drag you in, kicking and screaming, to lead with this one. When I'm talking about a video-based AI project, what kind of connectivity concerns do I need to be thinking about?
It's a great question. And fortunately, referring back to the intelligent edge we were just talking about, we can solve those problems, because if you're doing full video that's got to pass up and be stored in the cloud and then acted upon, it can get quite expensive. We have a customer who is a police force who literally is, they're not needing as much on the response times right now, but they want that video for security. And if we didn't have FirstNet data, they'd probably have to do a bond issue to pay for the data usage they would have, because video is very data usage intensive. Fortunately, because of what Michael described earlier and having that intelligence on the edge, we're sending information for that action, for the response that we need, as opposed to the video itself when we need to. So we can make this actually pretty manageable from a data standpoint. Obviously, the faster, the better. As you said, we're going to talk about 5G a little bit down the road, but we'll talk about the flavors. But look, with 4G LTE and LTEA, we can handle a lot of this right now, do it every day, and do it well.
Thank you, Todd. Michael, sir.
Yeah, so video AI, so it's kind of break the artificial intelligence and match it just, let's say, to images or frames. What is video? It's just a series of frames that have the, not quite as stop motion as QSIF and SIF and 4SIF used to be. Now we certainly are in the age of at least 15 frames per second, which is pretty amazing when you start thinking about what we're still able to do with AI, even on these very low level capabilities. But one of the things to think about here too is, what is the outcome? We want to be aware if something happens in a scene. So we've had environments that have extremely low connectivity capability because it's in a very remote area, and it's probably still running on some edge network somewhere that exists in the ultraverse. Well, what happens is with that solution is, if there's motion, it takes a picture, right? But it then sends that off to our cloud frame, which then renders the result and then puts that into a dashboard so that customer knows. The great thing is that wasn't full video. That was simply a frame that was captured, that was sent, processed, and now we're getting an outcome from that. So if it's something that's that simple, we can use a pretty low level of backhaul that's doing that. If you need frame by frame, like we're talking about life safety, I need to know how many people are in the crosswalk, where cars are. Industry 4.0, I need to know where the workers are and the forklifts and the machinery and things that are moving in here, so I can predict if there's going to be a security or a safety issue as part of that. And so it really is based on the use case of what you're trying to drive. And then the second part of that too is, with AI, at the end of that, when there's an event, AI it's detecting, it's tracking, it's doing extended classification on this. You want to get back to that root video, right? When you're getting an alert that says what happened, I'm going to either look at that clip or I'm going to go back and see what happens. You have to also be thinking about then, well, if that's sitting at that edge and I want to be able to pull 2 minutes worth of video off of that intelligent edge node, how long of time will that take? So those are the things to think through here, is what is the action and reaction? And then what are those steps in there and what bandwidth would be required for that? And at that intelligent edge, especially a universal IoT gateway from IntelliSite sold through BroadSky, and a whole solution set, again, as a service, whatever is required, we can embed all the different types of connectivity that could be required for that in there. And that's something that, again, when we're having these conversations, we want to make sure there's that right outcome. So we match that to the requirement, Bob.
Thank you, Michael. And the faster that our partners engage us in an opportunity, the faster we can bring that expertise to bear. I got my calculator out just before the call, just for a quick sanity check. So a very moderate video camera, IP video camera, streaming video is what? It's about 1 megabit per second. Let's just say, it could be less, it could be more. Let's just say 1 megabit per second. Well, how much is that? It is, and I got my calculator out, and it came to If I run that for an hour, that's 0.5 gigabyte of data in 1 hour. Or, of course, 11 gigabyte, 10.8, 11 gigabytes per day. So even if you've got the bandwidth, do you have the data plan that's going to allow you to suck it all back up into Skynet so it can do its wonderful stuff out there? If not, then you're going to have to do something at the edge, maybe not all of it, but something, and then bring back the rest. So yep, that's the end of my calculation. So that was AI. Michael, we talked about AI and connectivity. Does it change when we're talking about IoT?
It certainly does, from the sense of the size of that data, right? So a IoT blip, right, that's responding, it can be less than 1 kilobyte of data that's happening. And if you only care to know about that every 5 minutes, and even if you have 100 sensors, that's only every 5 minutes, you're using 500 kilobits of data, right? Or something, or over that amount of time. So what the important thing to note there is, it's the question around the data, but it's also the latency of that. Is that data from that IoT sensor, even though it's small, how important is that from a timeliness standpoint? So that if I have a major latency in that connection, and it takes hundreds of milliseconds or seconds for even that to be transmitted because of connectivity issues. If your RSSI is -100 and you're basically flickering in and out of connectivity, that's going to be a challenge even for a small type of data that is timely for that. So for IoT standalone projects, when you're not doing, for example, heavy video or high definition picture frames as part of that, you even have to look at how timely is the sensor data, where is that going to, who needs to be aware of it, and is there interplay within multiple local components that has to happen with, even if it's a very basic sensor.
Thank you, Michael. So Todd, would you give us your perspective on this?
It's so daggone hard following Michael because he does so well that you really can't.
He's not invited to the next one.
No, I mean,
No.
we need to change his name to Mr. Know-It-All. But what I would add, or at least try and enhance from that standpoint, is we've seen and done legacy IoT on, out in remote oil and solar locations where that data is not timely and it's small. So look, we have things where we go try and go to the carriers and find to talk about your data size, like a 250 megabyte plan, which is much lower than we do. And that's more than they're ever going to need for that sensor to talk in. So we get very finite on it. We want to solve the problem, but it is important to understand in this instance, the data is like, hey, we know this temperature, we're looking for a trend line. If it's, we've got a leak on an oil pipeline, then it starts becoming more timely and you have to start looking at latency and timeliness on it. So that's what I can add to what Michael said.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you. Todd, while you have the mic, and so that Michael has to follow you,
sure.
I'm going to ask you, so the carriers bring out 5G, everything's 5G enabled. IoT sensors are now 5G native. Is that a reality? Where are we with 5G rollout and adoption?
You're right about what we see on the commercials. And I talk to a lot of partners and I say, well, if it was like the commercials, we'd all be doing remote brain surgery ourselves now. But we really need to understand that there's two flavors of 5G in the world right now. There's the gigahertz frequency, which is gigabit speeds, which has less than 10 milliseconds of latency. And we will be able to do remote brain surgery with those. The frequency is very narrow. It won't even penetrate a pane of glass. It's going to take a while for us to get there. Basically, now you need to live in an airport or buy an NFL stadium to get, but it'll be deployed. Then we have the 600 megahertz, 600 gigahertz spectrum, sub-6 we call it, and we're taking. Really, what we're doing is we're bonding more frequencies, and we have some advanced routers. We can get some really advanced throughput. Will that help you now? You're in the right location. Yes, sirree, Bob. Oh, I got to say yes, sirree, Bob one time there. it can help you. We can talk about it and solve the problem for you. So 5G is here. 5G is just going to get better as we roll through the 20s, roll through this decade.
I love the reality check. Thank you very much, Todd. Michael, why don't you try and follow that?
Well, hey, I'll pick up my tap dancing shoes. So one thing I'll show you here, if you can see, right on there, that says LTE. And there's a reason that my phone says LTE, because where I live, even though it's in a very pretty built out area, LTE is faster than 5G that's here. So if I have my phone auto sense and goes to 5G, it's horrifically slow. And the reason for that is the build out isn't completed yet, right? And it was, you know, it's analogous to, are we ready to talk about modems? Can we go back that far? When we would talk about, there's this brand new 56K modem, 56K flex, right? 56K VT. Oh, sorry, the lines aren't ready for that. Oh, sorry, the modem banks aren't ready for that. So you always have this push and pull of technology and capability. Oh, we want to go to this next version of DOCSIS. Sorry, the equipment isn't rated for that. We can't get you to those upper level speeds. There's always a type of push and pull and build out that has to occur. And my perspective is, if we leverage 5G as early as possible to the places that can take the most advantage of it, right? Then we're going to do the right level of rollout, and we can take it with intelligent edge, with 4G. We can do amazing things at that edge that don't require 5G at all. I can even have near field communication via ultra wideband that has a better than a 500 megahertz channel. I can use millimeter wave that has over a 2160 megahertz channel and push gigs of bandwidth in between all of these places today without 5G, right? But it is something that needs to get pervasive. I do certainly want to leverage it on this device. Today, for most of our markets and most of our places, as Todd very clearly highlighted, it's not there yet. So how do we make it 5G ready? That's the big thing, is when you're deploying a solution like this, there's the right type of routers and systems that can be 5G ready with just simple software update or a SIM or a different carrier change. And that's why BroadSky does such amazing things with multi-carrier aggregation. Even if carrier A isn't ready to do that and carrier B gets ready, guess what? Toddy H is going to hook you up, and that's what's going to happen.
Toddy H is going to hook you up.
I had to follow up, yes, sir, Bob, with something.
So in the reviews about this webinar, that's going to be one of the two. Yes, sir, Bob. Bob's your uncle, and that one. Okay, let's move on. We've got a couple of oh goodness, we've got 5 questions. So let's speed through this if we can, Michael. Yeah, cybersecurity.
So I'll make this a 20-second answer. Yes, you need cybersecurity. You need to think through how your data is coming in from what devices. Are they secure? Where's that data landing? Is that secure? Do you have the right configurations and settings and monitoring and management of that? Because the settings of today are not going to work for settings of tomorrow. So we have validation of the data that's being created and where it's landing, and also those components in between. So make sure you have that discussion. That is a very big conversation we have with all of our partners and companies. And it is something that plays a huge role in that, from the validation of the data to ensuring that nobody's getting access to that or playing man in the middle.
It deserves its own entire conference.
It is a big conversation.
If you can pick up data from a remote sensor, or you can actuate some motor to do something, then so can the bad guys. So engage us early on.
People talk about BLE, right? Let's just use Bluetooth. Thank you for your data. You know, this is probably not the best way to do that, or just exposed USB ports and equipment that's sitting out there with the right level of lockdown and everything else. So the good news is we have people that can talk about that, and we can make sure that when you're talking about wanting to put a lot more data being created from sensors, we can be a great partner.
Excellent. Devil's in the details. Todd, I want you to run with this. Tell us about Private LTE and its role in AIoT.
Great. First thing I'll do is tie into what Michael was just talking about. If you're security conscious, one of the things a private LTE network can do is kind of air gap some of these things so it's not on a standard network. It's probably, this could be its own webinar. In fact, I bet it will be its own webinar very soon when we talk about private LTE. But the other things that it can help from an AIoT strategy is, number one, in the manufacturing world, Wi-Fi has some inherent problems from a deployment, from a latency standpoint. We can take our private LTE and we can minimize some of that latency and really do a lot better on the processes and efficiency we're looking for. Number two, we see campus deployments of private LTE where it's very difficult to extend networks out. Private LTE gives us the capability of doing that securely and does well. So those are the two things I would talk about. Thanks.
Thank you. Michael, would you wrap it up, please?
Yeah, so coming off the backside of what Todd is saying is it does certainly enhance security. It also gives you a platform that you can then extend out not only internally, but outside the parameters of your environment. And because it's a shared medium and it's lightly licensed as part of that, it's something that businesses can take advantage of and build a very well connected and also multi-type of communication handoff structure with that. And that technology is very viable. And then by 2022, it'll also incorporate 5G capabilities as well.
Thank you very much, Michael. Moving on swiftly, Jessica, I'm going to ask you to lead this one, please. Tell us a bit about Industry 4.0 and how it's relevant to what we're talking about today.
So Industry 4.0 is really smart manufacturing. So very relevant when it comes to manufacturing with the Wi-Fi, the different data that they're trying to gather, and the IoT, the sensors, IoT sensors, and any video analytics, and kind of bringing it all together. Whether they're trying to capture license plate recognition in their parking lots, or smart lighting and smart, doing sensors for air quality, it all kind of brings it back together. The data is all collected and it helps to validate trends within the smart manufacturing. And it really has to do with the digital transformation, right? Instead of a manual process, it's bringing it all into technology.
There's a lot to unpack there. Todd, I'll finish with you. Thank you, Jessica.
Sure. What we see, or what I like to talk about, is the legacy and not doing a rip and replace. We've seen examples within us where customers have a long time investment and don't want to put new sensors in, equipment in for that management improvement. We've seen where the IntelliSight Universal IoT Gateway really cleans things up, lets us go from multiple inputs and process from there. So I would talk about, from a challenge standpoint, taking that legacy data that's been building mountains and mountains of data out there and turning it into something that's action. That's what
Got it. Thank you. Jessica, I'll in the interest of time, would you kindly share with us any examples you have of successful partners in this space?
Sure. We have just a couple different partners that have come to us, and just really trying to solve the business outcomes with some of the issues of having maybe a bunch of different technologies where it's different cameras, different data. And the way that we've noticed that for everybody to be successful is having those conversations, having those making sure everything is qualified, that there's budget, and then the partner success is taking that and to be able to discuss and to show what the outcomes and the why of being able to solve for any of the AI and IoT that's needed.
Thank you. Todd?
Yeah, I can talk about partners that have solved problems. I think I mentioned before, helping expand police presence, do those kind of things. We're working on some things with digital signage where not only are we talking about helping them from a remote management standpoint, enhance that, but what do we do with AI and analytics and folks that are interacting with that digital signage and improve customer experiences and use cases? There's a wide swath, retail, hotel, hospitality. We've got a lot of verticals that we think we're really proficient in. and would love to talk about it further. I could talk for an hour and a half about this, but I'll stop there.
We could about all of these. Final question, and I'm going to ask each of you for just 30 seconds or less. When you see successful people selling in this space, what is common between them? I'll ask Todd first.
So, Bob, you stole a little bit of my thunder with some great comments about consultative selling and learning how to listen. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I look up above my bookshelf here. I'm an old guy. I've got my Bosworth Solution Selling book sitting on top of me. So learning how to not go in with preconceived notions and feature sets, learning how to listen and solve. But really, the last thing I want to add real quickly, one of the differentiators between what IntelliSight and BroadSky are doing is we're coming up from a marketing standpoint with use case after use case after use case, so that when you talk to a customer in a particular vertical, all you need to do is go, what are you doing about this? And listen. If they've got a problem, you come to us, we solve a problem, we win a deal. That's as short as I can do it.
Well put. Jessica.
I would just to kind of piggyback on what Todd said is also use resources. Like you want to have that consultative and ask a lot of questions, but there's resources out there like someone like Todd that can help to figure out, is that a good opportunity, or should, you know, I think I hear all the time, it helps us win fast and lose fast as well.
Excellent. Michael.
Make sure you have your pre-sales or solutions architect on speed dial, because we will help you crush it.
Very good. Okay, I'm going to switch over to Q&A, and I'm going to ask one panelist to answer each question for just 15 seconds or less. The first one, I'm just going to drive through some of these. AIoT, why don't we just focus on the business problems addressed, which happen to use sensors and mobile Wi-Fi networks to communicate and transport the data and information to the MEC and back-end processing systems?
That would be a Michael question, I hope.
Yeah, so again, this is part of the whole conversation, is how timely is it to ingest and enrich your data? So I will tell you today for an absolute fact, across cities all over the US, cities in Europe and everywhere else, the connectivity of getting back to a MEC, leveraging 4G today, is either not available or it is extremely low capacity to do that. And as we were mentioning, when we're leveraging very critical things such as traffic intersections, life safety, and things like that, having a sub-millisecond, 10 to 20 millisecond response to a situation that's occurring that can then be alerted and focused on, that's not where that's at today. As Todd mentioned, once pervasive, ultra wideband 5G is here, that's something you can absolutely drop to the MEC. Well, when we're saying AIoT, it's not focusing on what the business outcome is, right? The why that they're trying to get to. It's talking about the mechanism of being able to connect, ingest, enrich, bring those insights and outcomes. So that outcomes is always the end approach. And because we are very fortunate to work with a lot of the carriers today, and we're doing really interesting things like with carriers that are then using Amazon Web Services and even pushing that out to their MECs and things like that, that's still a 5G level of connectivity that's required. And in many cases, it's ultra wideband 5G. So it's still rolling out. It will come, but we're not there yet today.
Thank you. Brief answer. In fact, I think I'll try and answer this. And someone was asking me for my cell phone number. I'll be happy to give it to you, even though I don't know who on earth you are, but you're now my friend. Question was, gunshot detection, automatically locked doors. Is that a simple or complex? It's simple. There are many ways that we can pick up loud sounds, even categorize it into glass breaking, gunshot, explosion, or screaming. That comes into our platform, Deep Insights, a rule that says, if this happens, then do this, which happens to be mass notification, alert the police, initiate a lockdown, keep the fire exits open, and so on. So that's a straightforward one. Todd, can you see that question from Bob about, can you quickly tell us some applications for the following? I think the different frequency ranges.
Well, you know, that's really kind of on the sub-6, 600 is what I'm trying to. I may be wrong, Bob, and you know, probably the right answer is for me to kind of get back to you and when we send something out. But the 600 gigahertz or sub-6 gigahertz is the right answer rather than 600. So I'm like our president. I have a malpractice.
Excellent, excellent. I'm sure these answers would be a lot easier after a drink anyway.
Absolutely.
There's another question here. Do you have examples of AI being used to ingest data from legacy SCADA systems to provide insights? I'll leave it at that. Michael.
Yeah, so we do. What we've done as an example, whether it's ClearSCADA or something else, we'll run a integration to the platform where it's pushing or it's exposing certain views. So the one thing's about, you know, OT versus IT, operational technology, you know, usually very air gapped, and there's only certain ways to expose views of that data coming from the SCADA system, or if you have effectively the old vampire tap into the PLC Ethernet, and a couple of other different types of things. But from a SCADA side, we've done deployments where we've had a SCADA platform where we got exposed views from there. We did an ingestion process as that data is being created and put into those views where we pull that in to a platform. And what we also did for that customer is they had a lot of challenges expanding their environment, not only from what the PLCs could do, but with the visualization layer. So what we did was we brought in a number of additional sensors that also is flowing data into Deep Insights. We took the SCADA data as part of that. We have cameras running AI, and then sensors doing things. And this is a water utility where they're doing water quality. They're also doing level visibility, vibration detection on the water gates and things like that. And being able to have, we talked about that stream of data, right? Each one of those has a threshold and it is important by itself, but together, if I understand the speed of the water flow, the state of the water gate, the vibration of that water gate, and then quality, and then throughput as it goes out to each specific canal, then I'm providing an outcome to that customer. So that's one where we've pulled together a lot of different data sets coming from an OT environment and built that in there. And diverse sensor inputs, optical, absolutely, thermal right now for security. So for nighttime detection of people that are shouldn't be on the dam. I got to say dam on the call, so I win. But they were somewhere else like that. So those are the types of things where you can pull all those types of detections and alerts together to create that outcome.
It's going to take longer to get the video out to everyone because now we're going to have to beep over that. Jessica, I'm going to ask you this general question. How does a partner get help? What's the process?
So the best way is to reach out to the BroadSky channel manager, and they will help and qualify. And then that's when I get involved after that. So I'll help do a deeper dive, and then we'll gather the resources if obviously if the opportunity will go forward. So we try to obviously work as what we all say, the hashtag one team, and that we're able to get those from start to finish.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And with that, we are at the hour mark. I didn't have a chance to ask the poll, but hey, we'll do it again another day. Jessica, Todd, Michael, thank you so much for joining me today. Everyone, thanks for dialing in. Catch up with you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.